Good morning, Frederic. Good morning, San Francisco. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you, and good morning to Bucharest. Glad we
Actually, good
connect
evening.
for.
It's good evening here. Yeah, it's night already.
Yeah, good
Yeah.
evening for you. That's right. Yeah, that's a miracle of interacting over the internet. We could be anywhere. That's a new
Yes.
reality, isn't it? Yeah. So today we're going to focus our discussion on the new reality, the new normal, whatever we call it, so let's start with a quick introduction of who you are and how did you get to the GI in few words, but just to understand how you got also to the subject we are going to discuss today.
Yeah. I wonder where should I start. It's a long journey already for me, and it somehow started with a rather technical part because I liked very much the IT and programming when I was in school, in secondary school and high school, and also in the university. So somehow I'm at the intersection between technology and also people side, human resource, and people management, because in fact, during my studies, I realized that I'm made for something else than working alone in the office, in the back part of the office, let's say. So for more than 20 years, I've been doing a lot of activities related to people management and talent acquisition, and
Hmm. Hmm.
most of them from the position of consultant and entrepreneur. So after working in the NGO environment for some years during my studies, I have started to work in executive search, headhunting, and recently after that, I have founded my own company in recruiting for IT and communications field, and I did that for more than 10 years. And then I moved more to the management side, to the let's say the hard part of managing people, of managing human resource, the processes, the KPIs and the finance and the resourcing behind that, everything that has to do with measuring the impact, with measuring cost, with making decisions based on hard facts. So after switching from soft to hard parts of uh, people side, um, I'm back into, let's say, managing the soft part in a hard and tangible way. So the moment I was in first time in contact with GRI, with the GRI, I realized that a lot of what we consider intangible in terms of how people act and perform and excel is in fact measurable, can be discussed, can be improved, can be strategized. So this is what I loved about it, and that's why very soon after getting in contact with the GRI first time, uh, I was with my feet physically in the Bay Area in San Francisco for meeting you and the team, our international team, in getting to know each other, getting certified with the GRI, and moving on is in this beautiful journey for already more than 7 years now.
Yeah, that's 7 years now. That's a good time. So a lot has been done in 7 years. And so now we're working with many clients, small and very large, and in many different fields, industries. So a lot of experience with the GI. So we'll get back to that later. The topic today being the new reality. So things have changed for the last 2 years. I mean, over these 7 years you have been working with the GI. These two last years have been quite something. And so, how can you qualify or better qualify or what really has changed for you and for your clients also. And again, we're very different and have been through these 2 years in very different ways also.
First of all, I think it's neither good or bad if you look
Mm-hmm.
from, let's say, a helicopter view. Uh, it is a change indeed. And as you know, we have worked more last year in 2020 to manage our systems in a way to be able to deliver uh, state-of-the-art services from, let's say, the new way of working. So we are lucky to be in a business where you can deliver almost everything online. But
Yeah, that was quite some work. That's right. Yeah.
I think 2020 just accelerated our next steps that we anyway were considering in order to be able to scale and to expand our reach anywhere in the world. So I think today it's pretty easy to work with people from LA to Tokyo or to Sydney uh, in uh, in the same group or in separate groups from a single place, which is in fact where you are located. Doesn't matter where this is. So a lot of this work first can be delivered, which we didn't do before. Secondly, can be delivered quite efficiently. So after the experience in these last 2 years, I think we are able uh, to coach, to assist, to support, and to engage in assignments with our clients uh, at least 90% in terms of efficiency uh, compared to the way we did before when we were having in-person interaction. So I think
Mhm. So
this is
there is a
really
10% here. So
there is a
we want to
yeah
know
there
about
is
the
a
10%.
10%. The 10%
Mm-hmm.
here is not related to the quality of work, is not related to the substance of the content, is not related to the speed of learning, is in fact, in my opinion, related to emotion and trust. So I think the hardest things to remote is to do that with emotion, trust, and obviously empathy. So this work, as talking before, um, became more efficient, became easier in terms of costs. Yeah, you don't need to travel that much. You can work with groups which are not located in the same place. So people from the groups can be scattered worldwide, which makes the things much easier in terms of logistics. But in the same time, we miss some of what it is built in between the formal talking, in between the formal interactions.
So
This,
would you qualify or quantify that 10%? So emotions, the people aspects. So it's not technical or it's not the KPI aspect or the efficiency aspect eventually of it. But so it's a different aspect of what builds when we're in contact with people rather than through the internet, whether they're in Tokyo or Singapore, New York. What's that 10%? Can you qualify it more?
I think it's also related to the taste. Uh, when you
Mm-hmm.
go in another place, one of the things you do, you get a taste, a smell, a flavor of what this place is, and you can see the people in their own environment. But you can do that with all your senses, not only with audio and video. And that makes an immersive experience. And this is the same for a person and the same for a group. So the group, when we are all in a room, we are immersed emotionally, psychologically, and physically into the discussion, into the dynamic of what is happening over there. We relate to each other, and it's much more fluent and natural many-to-many relationship.
Mm-hmm.
When I work now with groups, it's I think we get quite a lot of one-to-many. So my interaction with the people I lead into the discussions and the coaching sessions, it's pretty similar to what we did in the in-person sessions. But I think the persons are not interacting in the same way in between them. They are not naturally asking each other different questions. They are not naturally expressing some doubts or fears or these kind of things that you are uh, uh, much easier able to discuss by the coffee machine or the water cooler in between the
Mm-hmm.
session, and they are completing the experience, the immersive experience. Now this doesn't happen. It's a bit more transactional, and I think the trust between people it's more built from actions and results related to the scope
Mm-hmm.
of work. The other kind of trust, which is related to who the person is, how the person thinks, beyond the topic of our discussions, we kind of miss when we are doing this online. And that kind of feeling and sensing completes the picture of this interaction. Yeah, also,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Simon Sinek said something like the trust is built in between the work session when we are helping
Mm-hmm.
each other, when we see that the person doesn't get along in the office or with the food and we are helping, when we are discussing about our culture, when we are discussing with each other as humans beyond the job, beyond the assignment, beyond the scope of our work that brings us together in the same virtual or physical room. So I
And
think
that's
right
something you
now,
could experience as so. Yeah, sorry. Yes, please go on.
I think right now the interaction is much more focused. It's uh, you have a session, you ended up, and then within 1 or 2 minutes you can be in a completely other session with people from a completely different part of the world
Mm-hmm.
with a
Mm-hmm.
completely different topic. And this is kind of scary. Yeah, you can be anywhere in the world, but at the same time, you are not fully into the environment where the people work. Because when as a consultant, walk inside a company office, a client office, I can see people discussing to each other. I can see people arguing on the corridor about different things. I can see body language and different sights and different gestures that complete the image of how those people interact in between them. While in
Mm-hmm.
the online, the people only show you what they want you to see. So most of the time, when there is something they don't want to show, they simply switch off the camera, which is not possible when you are in the room. So when you are in the physical room, you are there with the good and the bad. When you are in a Zoom or Teams or Blue Jeans or whatever kind of online session, you are there with what you want to show when you want to show.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more like interacting with a kind of, let's say, a mask with each
Interesting
other.
analogy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you have been in these two different situations where you have had delivered some seminar on site and also online, and so you have been able to contrast those two situations. And so I want to know now and change the discussions to your clients. How you are spending a large amount of time, servicing and following what they are doing with the GI, and so how do you think they are getting through that? Everything you have experienced yourself as a consultant, how does it translate to what they are going through themselves, at work? I know you have clients in different industries, so they may have been through very different experiences. Some are deskless workers eventually. Some are bond desk workers. So there's there are very different situations. But how did they go through that? What was your experience with them going through the pandemic and still going on with and with your experience with the GI with them?
Yeah, it's a very complex, not the question, but the answer here, and the answer is not static because what happens is
Mm-hmm.
dynamic, and it was one picture at the beginning of the pandemics and another picture now and maybe another picture tomorrow. Why I'm saying that? Because let's say in the first 2 or 3 months after the lockdown, uh, most of the teams who worked together were there before in a physical interaction, like in a in-person interaction. Yeah. So that trust that we were talking about before was already there, was already built. So it was really easy to keep a dynamic and a trust level within a group, within a team. And some of the things worked so easily, naturally, so that people found ways to be so efficient while working from home, despite all the other challenges like the doggy, the kids, and yeah, despite all these things, they found a way to make the work efficient. But since then, since last year, things changed. Many teams brought in new people, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
this is where one of the issues is, because the persons, I think, they can feel easily the newcomers. They can feel easily what is the scope of work, what they need to do, what are their resources, what are their contacts, and what are their KPIs, what they need to deliver. But they don't really get the kind of culture that the company has. They get part of it. Because culture, for me, the definition of the culture that I like most, organizational culture, is the most simple one. The culture means the way the things are going around here. That is the culture. Either you write it on the walls or you explicitize it, you put it in words or not. Either it is the culture that you want or there is the culture that you don't like. No matter what happens, the way the things are going around here at the moment are the company culture. So obviously, this online, this remote work brings new aspects of this culture, the way people treat each other, the way people give assignments, delegate each other, respect their time, and respect their word, and engage each other in working together, even remotely. Yeah, it's part of the culture, but it's not the same
I like this
as,
definition. So the culture is the way things are going on here. I love
yeah,
it. I
going
love it
around
this way.
here.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. Yes.
Yes, there are
Mm-hmm.
many definitions of the culture. I don't. I think I forgot more than half.
It's a great
But
one.
but
Yeah.
this one is the most simple, and uh, I wonder, as a newcomer in a company, how different it is to work for a company today and for another one tomorrow from the same environment, physical environment, which is your home office, or which is a
Mm-hmm.
shared office space, or whatever it is. So uh, I think that the difference is mainly into the content of your work. So this is what you realize, it is
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
different, and it is in a way you are appreciated for what you deliver. But everything that happens, although maybe more efficient in some aspects, uh, I find it a bit less human. So
Mm.
people in
So there's
this,
the emotional aspect that you were describing before. There is this
yes,
10%
they,
we are
they, they
missing.
are, they are
And
rather discussing
mhm.
job title to job title. So this is the
Mhm, mhm,
project
mhm,
manager who needs to discuss with the developer who needs to code this part, and that's the topic in the discussion. Is
mhm,
not
mhm,
uh, my feelings or my engagement or
mhm,
uh, why am I not performing to my maximum unless it is planned to be in the discussion. So unless the scope of the discussion
mhm, mhm,
is the engagement, the effort that you put, the environment, the feedback, unless this is the topic, the sole topic of the discussion, uh, you oftenly disregard these aspects and you focus on your assignments, you focus on your deadlines and your well, on your business KPIs, and you hope that the things are getting done.
mhm. So I
So
jump into that aspect here. Sorry to interrupt. Regarding the GI, so don't you think that's one aspect that the GI brings also into the discussion when being more aware of who people are and how they react and what they need in terms of communication, in terms of this emotional component of who they are to better match so their requirements. Do you think that that's something that the GI brings into that new reality, that new world where we are in? Some more reflection on who people are during those moments where we're interacting, maybe in a very transactional way to bring some kind of humanity, as you put it.
uh, you know that uh, we speak about leading beyond intuition for many years, and
Mm-hmm.
the positioning was something like, yeah, GRI can potentiate your intuition. Yeah, I can confirm some of the things
Mm-hmm.
that you already know subconsciously because of your vast experience, let's say as a leader, as a manager. But at the same time, GRI challenges some of your intuitions
Mm-hmm.
and shows that, okay, it's not exactly like you think it is unless you measure it and you see what is happening and why this is happening. And this is what GRI was already bringing into the picture before COVID and before this new reality. Right now, I think the intuition itself is kind of handicapped. So it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to use your intuition when there is not that much emotion and energy remoted via distance working. So
Mm-hmm.
now you miss those things and you need even more tangibles when talking about people, about inclinations and drives, when talking about bringing the best out of the people in your team, when talking about delivering on the emotional needs of others and servicing your team as a leader. So, right now, besides the functional part of the work, the other part is quite hard to have without the intuition, without, let's say, 90% of the intuition is kind of cut. Uh, but uh, this is, I think, exactly the gap that GRI feels quite quite nicely because it's it is generating a platform for smart conversations, for giving feedback person to person, human to human. So beyond my role as a sales director, your role as a project manager, we are talking about who we are, how are we performing the things, where do we have stretches, how big are these stretches, and do they lead us to disengagement, anxiety, or even more to burnout, or are they manageable stretches? What are the fights that I'm willing to engage in as a person. So obviously, when you go in any kind of environment, you need to adapt, and this adaptation can be easier or more difficult to do. Uh, right now, it's really hard to adapt unless you have systems and mechanism and feedback mechanism uh, to enable you to learn about what is expected from you and to
Mm-hmm.
show to your peers and to your subordinates and superiors where you are best at, what they can ask from you, and what they rather shouldn't ask from you because you all might not be the best in the team to provide. And I'm not talking functionality here. I'm not talking about functional on the job tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about ways to perform. As an example, there are people in the same team, be it an accounting team or a sales team, that are more pushy, are more result oriented, are more pragmatic. There are other people who are more empathetic, who are more caring for others. There are people who like to engage in discussions and like to influence others, while there are other people who are more laid back, who like to work more with numbers, with facts, who like more in to work more in solitude and to bring out their skill and precision in the process. They might have the same jobs, but some of them are better
Mm-hmm.
to be put in front when negotiating with a counterpart. Some others are much better to have to secure the accuracy of the delivery of your process in the same team with the same job title. Some of them are better in managing complexity. Some others are better in starting from a white paper and building up a project in the same sales team or in the same project team.
So that changes fundamentally also, this remote work, how managers work with a team. Everything you were speaking about, regarding these differences between people and how they react to the environment, the eventual lack of immediate feedback they can get, and those nuances that get into some gaps here, that we used to be able to sense and see and smell even sometimes, that don't exist anymore today. So all of that changes fundamentally the work of managers who have to recruit, manage, remotely, and get into everything you just described, with all these nuances in the different way than they used to. They are working with people they have never met physically, and will never meet eventually. They are remote, distantly, and so that's the new reality, that this is how they're going to engage into discussions and manage those remote people, this new way, more than before. So there are some fundamental changes in the way not just the culture builds, but also how managers have to manage people and executives have to do their job of executives. No, I mean, can you uh, react to that?
Definitely, when you are in your office physically, it's it's easy to see, for example, that a person working in outgoing sales who needs to make, I don't know, 50 calls per day just doesn't make the calls, is afraid to pick up the receiver and talk. Yeah. It's afraid to start. It's afraid about the answer that the person is going to receive. Yeah. And being there, you realize that. And as a, not necessarily as a manager of the person, but as a peer, you might ask, "Hey, Tom, what's happening with you? Do you have something on your heart? Are you afraid of something? Can I help with anything?"
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
by being there, you realize what is the problem of that person. Yeah. By being remote, remote is not only about the meeting that we have now, it's about what happens in between the meetings when the people are alone. And you simply don't see the results and you don't know why this is happening. And then the
mm-hmm,
people
mm-hmm,
will start making up excuses like where I called many prospects, but they didn't answer or they didn't want or etc. While in fact, if you work with the GRI, you might realize from the beginning that the person, that our colleague Tom, has a problem with being rejected. Every active sales call is a potential rejection. And considering the funnel of this kind of sales, more than 90 of the calls contain, at a certain step in the process, a rejection. So that person will act against who he is, will act against his fears if he is to take on this kind of assignment. But if you know it
mm-hmm,
from the beginning, if you measure it, then you realize that Tom would be much better with his skill in sales to work in farming clients than in hunting clients. You
mm-hmm,
obviously
mm-hmm.
won't move him into the accounting or into software development because he's not specialized in that. But within the sales team, you can find a place where the person can excel, can shine, where the person feels more secure and has clients to farm, doesn't need to hunt. And with that clients, the person will put all the effort to bring a high quality work so then the client is satisfied. And this is where the
Mm-hmm,
gain
mm-hmm.
is. You don't need to fire Tom, you don't need to replace uh, Tom, you just need to share responsibilities within the team according to primary drives and inclinations and building on that. And building on that
Mm-hmm.
not only on the current job, but on the succession planning and career management. So you will not have situations like this in the future to have other person hired for that position and for making calls to hunt for clients, but being afraid of making that call. And this is one of the things that you don't solve by teaching skills. The
Mm-hmm,
person
mm-hmm,
is simply in different shoes, and no matter
mm-hmm,
what you try, those shoes won't fit the person. So that's why
mm-hmm,
you need to. We like to. One of our clients came with this uh, expression. GRI enables us to put the fish in the water and the monkey in the tree. So let's take the fish out from the tree and put the fish in the water. Because most probably in your organization you have both monkeys and fishes, but not all of them are in their natural environment.
Yeah, I like this image. You know, the fish and the monkey because they are so different, and in the world of behavior, that's not as it seems to be, and we make a lot of mistakes because of that, unfortunately. Um, and what you just described also starts from the recruitment stage or the interviewing stage or even the selection stage where you start to intuit and really better understand what will happen eventually and make some prognostic or really to anticipate what support you are going to provide to that person and how to assist him or her to better grow and perform in the job. And we're speaking more and more about well-being in these days, so I guess it applies also to the well-being of that person in the job. Why to really push on things which are super hard to do if it's not part of who you are, and you constantly need support for that. At a certain point, you want to switch to something else, or thank the experience of having done that work for 1 month and move on. So all these situations can be eventually more anticipated, and starting from the recruitment stage. Is it something you have seen also? Not just when people are on the job, but before and applying what you just said to the recruitment phase of what the manager has to do.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. That GRI enables you
Mm-hmm.
not to put persons in position, even though the CV might look okay, the technical background and experience and the references might look okay, but GRI can show you if the person is rather made or not for the job from the point of view of expected behavior, of
Mm-hmm.
expected
Mm-hmm.
way of performing. I give you another example here. If you expect you recruit a manager and you expect the manager to be a self-taking charge leader with initiatives, with uh, fast decision making and fast-paced action, who can push things sometimes when there is some resistance in the way, and you want an autonomous person to perform the job, and you recruit a person who in fact is very much preoccupied of satisfying everybody, caring for the others, uh, treasuring much more, let's say, the each relationship than the final result, giving up on the result because of a good relationship with certain people, and so on. So you might have a person there who needs reconfirmation, who
Mm-hmm.
needs
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
support, who needs patting on the shoulder, which is not bad because these are the persons who are there and enable you to run the process properly and uh, to precisely deliver on the KPIs because they are so caring about the output and about uh, delivering what you promise. But on the other hand,
Mm-hmm.
those persons will not be the risk takers. Those persons will not be the initiators. Those persons will not push and challenge others to get the expected results that you need to get from the person in that position. Yeah, so it's GRI is a way of matching expectations on a position with
Mm-hmm.
the persons who are closer to that or who can adapt easier because you'll never find, let's say, perfect fits.
Mm-hmm.
But some persons can adapt much easier than others because their, let's say, DNA is made for that kind of job. They are pit bulls.
Mm-hmm.
They are in the arena. They like combat. They go and get results from competing in the market, while others are the ones who build your consensual culture, who raise the people in your teams, who can coach easier, who can have other sets of skills than you need for that position.
Yeah,
That's
and
one.
as yeah, yeah. Sorry, please.
Yeah, that's one.
Yeah,
Please go on.
no, that's fine. Please go on. Mihai. After
Oh,
you.
that
After you.
that was one of the aspects. Um, the other aspect, I think you'll cut this one because I forgot. I wanted to say something before. Yeah, I remember. GRI is not only about the evaluation, the assessment, and it's not only about the result of the assessment. And what I love most about GRI and what makes it stand out is the positioning. GRI is made for in-person interaction. is made for giving feedback, is made for discussing and agreeing and moving on, deciding and acting. You cannot do these things if you only measure and show the results to the manager.
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
very important when you evaluate a person, no matter the level, you give feedback to the person. Because half of what GRI is a process and not just the result. By receiving feedback, people feel that the organization cares for them, that the organization understands them, that the organization understands them how they are, and that the organization cares for providing them a suitable environment for performing and for developing. Even though everything is not perfect, even though it is not possible to provide all the things that would make that person shine, but at least the organization, which means your colleagues, your superior, your HR, know about you, know about your talent, and they communicate these things to you. And this communication, the first feedback is very important because we had many feedback from clients. They said they had people who said, this is the first time when I feel somebody understands me.
Mm-hmm.
And that would not work if you only provide automatic report to people.
Oh, totally, totally. Yeah, and we know the power of the feedback and the benefits, not just for the individuals, but also for the managers and for the organization of people, like you just said, who feel uh, so well understood and discover something about them they ignored before, just after 10 minutes of answering these two questions. And so there's beauty into that, which eventually, and back to the new reality, feedback can be provided online remotely, and so that's something
Yes,
eventually which is easier to do than before. So you can organize and set up those feedback sessions in a much more convenient and a way, and so that experience can be shared more frequently than it used to in 2 years ago. No, I mean,
actually,
have you seen that also? Or
what you remember, Frederic, that we used to give a lot of feedback remotely before this new reality,
that's
before
right.
the
Yeah, yeah.
COVID. So
Mm-hmm.
this feedback works more or less the same in the
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
remote. Where I feel that something is missing in terms of emotion and energy is in the team dynamics, because
Mm-hmm,
there
mm-hmm,
is
mm-hmm.
about the dynamics, is about people feeling, sensing each other. You know, it's a feeling to have everyone in the room, and to
Mm-hmm,
for the
mm-hmm,
team
mm-hmm.
building is important that they meet at least several times per year, no matter how
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
distant they are, no matter how what the situation is. At some point, I mean, the permanent teams, they need to meet
Mm-hmm.
together, as we do. We come from all the parts of
Mm-hmm,
the
mm-hmm.
world to meet together
Absolutely.
for our summits. We need that, and these meetings enable us to work remotely for the next half a year or for the next period, because the level of energy is there. Um, Coming back to the feedback part, uh, there might seem easier for some managers to ask, let's evaluate my team, show me the results, and that's it. This will not work. Why? Because if you do something, if you measure something, it's important to act on it. And if you do not talk to the people in the team, they will not change anything. They will not know what is expected from them. They will behave the same. There is no added value of our evaluation. Although you provide automatic reports, you can do that, but it is just better than nothing. It is better, yeah, than nothing, but
Yeah, and
it is
totally.
not
And
all.
a lot of systems work this way. Yeah.
While if you talk to the manager and if you talk to the team
Mm-hmm.
members, And if you create a space, a safe space, that's another thing which is important. GRI creates a safe space to discuss about things considered intangible or delicate by yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can put them on the table and discuss it with a cold mind, so not when you are angry or
Mm-hmm.
when there is a powerful reason to start the discussion. No, you discuss it just because you have a platform for doing that. And when you discuss it
Mm-hmm.
together with the team, then people understand, people ask questions, people receive feedback, and they commit
Mm-hmm.
to each other to do things to improve
Absolutely. Yeah.
their
Yeah.
relationship
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. They know what to ask and not to ask from each other. They know how to ask things. They know how
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
delegate better. So this way, not only the manager is the one who needs to be informed, but everybody. And after that, I think it's compulsory that they talk together and they
Mm-hmm.
align because GRI is a lot about alignment. You
Mm-hmm.
align the people, the person, you align the natural inclinations with a role, with a defined role
Mm-hmm.
or with a perceived role, how the person perceives the role as a result of environment stimulation. You align the persons to each other, which means you help them to understand each other and do some quick fixes so that they can respond better to the other's needs. You
Mm-hmm.
align people in a team for a certain scope. You align an organization. So GRI also has this wonderful feature to aggregate measurements and to measure a team, a department, or the whole organization in terms of what kind of predilect behaviors and drives are in there and why this organization is different than the other as a whole. Yeah, with the
Mm-hmm.
GRI, you can look
Mm-hmm.
into the small parts, individuals, into aggregated parts like the team, permanent teams or temporary teams, and then you can look into the divisions and the organization as a whole.
Yeah, totally. And so that changes the work of the manager. I mean, in these remote times or hybrid times, whatever we call them, there are more and more discussions about how to meet people from time to time, every week or every semester or depending on situations. But to meet them and the information we bring with the GI allows managers to really intuit people in advance and get into those feedback sessions and really understand people what they need in a much more precise way than what it used to be. So hopefully, those times, remote times, are pushing for some new ways of managing people, which will bring some wealth and more performance to organizations and to individuals. So we'll see where it's going. I would like to move on and move to the conclusion here, where there's so much more to be said about those remote times or new times, new reality, as we like to call it. And GI brings a lot, and what you have done also with your clients and over there it's just wonderful in terms of how it deploys into the organization and how they benefit from it in a very different way than we used to even 2 years ago. With now all these remote seminars and remote sessions and the coaching we are doing with the GI, so things have been changing so fast. And so I'm glad we can interact about what's happening today. I would like to conclude with some words you can say, because I know you travel. You love to travel with your
Yes,
family, and so that's something you don't do remotely. That's something that happens in physically. And so what's your next trip? What's your next travel? Where are you going to go next? And so not through the internet, but in real. So what's your prospect here?
yeah, I hope to be able to get uh, to the Alps in Austria for skiing this
Okay, yeah,
winter.
nice. What's coming?
But I also like to see if it is possible to have an in-person summit of the GRI in Bay Area in California or anywhere in
Mm-hmm.
the world where we can meet again in person. And for the summer, and this is a big one if possible, I'm meeting my old international ISEC friends. We like to go with our families in Mozambique. So
Oh,
let's
Mozambique.
see,
Oh, wow.
yes,
Yeah, that's
for
interesting.
the safari and
Very nice place.
for swimming with
Mm-hmm.
the hippos, and that would be an excellent experience. And yes, this you cannot remote. And
Okay.
as much as I love to travel for leisure, the same I love to travel for work. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
getting to know people in their own environments
Mm-hmm.
enriches you and shows you perspectives. And you realize that the person on the screen is actually not in the same room with you. And the reality
Mm-hmm.
over
Mm-hmm.
there is really different. The taste of the food is different. The smell and the climate is different. And the general stretches, preoccupations, and realities are different. And from all these
Mm-hmm.
differences, you have a way to learn about who the person is, about how you work with that persons, and you yourself, you get much richer. And this is the richness that you take with you at the end of your life. Yeah, this is what you can take with you, all this experience when traveling and meeting people and places.
Yeah, and so I'm glad we speak about that. So there are eventually three levels of lives now. So there's this real life of traveling and meeting people and meeting situations and having some good food in different places and so much richness, through those moments. And there's now this remote work, and remote reality and new reality at work, which eventually concerns 30% of the workforce. 70% of the workforce apparently is not on desk, but without desk and working in this real space of our world. And we'll see what Facebook will bring with the new virtual reality next. So a third level where we will transport ourselves in a virtual world. So we'll see how it goes in the future. But right now, we may eventually have just to reality. So that's enough to deal with and to adapt. And these 2 years have been forcing very different practices and ways of working and living, and traveling. Hopefully, we'll meet all of us in person soon for a new GI summit. Well, Mihai, thank you very much for this interview and for your input and experience, sharing everything you have been going through with the GI and in so nice situations with your clients and the benefits I saw they took from it. So thanks for your time and having the opportunity to interact here. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic, and have a great day. And looking forward to meet you in whatever way it is possible.
Yeah, not the virtual space, real space. Okay.
Yeah, we're talking about that. I remember our powerful debates in Miami GRI summit
Mm-hmm.
much better, and they are much more genuine in my mind than
Mm-hmm.
our discussions, for example, in the last summit when we were online. Although it
Yeah,
was
very different.
delightful
Yeah.
with the
Mm-hmm.
setup and yes, but
Mm-hmm.
this is very different.
Yeah, being physically present was
And so
was
sweating
yeah, yeah,
sweating
just
together
a
in the
different
same room and
memory.
seeing that on the forehead
Mm-hmm.
of the people next to you, you realize that you put some sweat in what you're doing physically.
Absolutely, absolutely. Good. Thank you, Mihai.
Great.